First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai Bahashim Rokakwadash. Yahweh is to this world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai is to this world ignorantly calls Jesus. Bahashim means in the name, Rakah means spirit, and Qudash means holy. And that's on the Paleo Hebrew. I also want to give double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that taught me this truth. So today's video, I wanted to go into how Jacob, the Israelites, are a peculiar people. Okay, we are a nation of people that is different from everybody else. And the law, statutes, and commandments show that. So I'm going to start off with Deuteronomy chapter 14 and verse 2. It says, "For thou art an holy people unto Yahweh thy power, and Yahweh hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth." Right? So the Israelites are above all other nations. Okay, we are better at literally everything. That's why you see, in every single sport, in every single entertainment, who is exceeding the Israelite man and woman. Okay, the fastest to run, the so-called blacks. Basketball dominated by the so-called blacks. Baseball dominated by the Latinos. The Dominicans, Puerto Ricans. They're known for that baseball, right? So when you look at everything, it's always Israelites on top. Now, with that, comes that peculiarness, which means peculiar. Treasure, value, property, peculiar treasure, property, wealth. And when you search up that word, it says strange or odd, unusual, particular, special. Right? That's exactly when you see, what you see when you look at, the so-called Latinos, Negroes, and Native Americans is that we're not the same as everybody. Okay, the way we move, the salt we have, the sazon, seasoning as they say in Spanish, right? It is different, right? People can see that there's something, odd about this. It's something, special. And when you go into it, it just goes back to, who our forefather was, Jacob, right? And how he was blessed, through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that whole blessing. But what I wanted to deal with today specifically was this right here in another post. So it says, a new army shaving policy will allow soldiers with skin condition that affects mostly black men to be kicked out, right? And let's read this. It says, a recent change to the U.S. military's grooming policy has sparked outrage and concern among service members and advocates for racial equity. The new rules state that soldiers who develop pseudofolliculitis barbae, PFB, better known as razor bumps, can be discharged if they require a shaving waiver for more than 1 year in any 2-year period. Studies show that up to 60% of black men experience PFB, while it's much less common in other groups. For years, the military allowed permanent waivers for those with a doctor's note, letting them skip shaving for medical reasons. But under the Trump administration and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, permanent waivers were revoked, and grooming standards became much stricter. These changes are part of a larger effort to scale back diversity and inclusion initiatives in the military. By disproportionately affecting black service members and putting their careers at risk due to a medical condition, these new rules make it even harder for black Americans to serve. And, the key thing about this is that it says that the majority of people that have this condition are black men, right? 60% are black men. And you gotta ask yourself, why is it that these people, out of everybody, as they say, right, it's less common in other groups, why is it that, these black men, these Israelites, have this problem? And the answer goes back to the laws. The reason is because the Israelites, Israelite men are not supposed to be shaving off their beards. And the Most High essentially, made a curse for doing that. He made a condition, a punishment for taking off your beard. So let's read this in Leviticus chapter 19 verse 27. It says, "Ye shall not round the corners of your head, neither shalt thou mark the corners of thy beard." Right? So you're not supposed to mark the corners of your heads. You're not supposed to get lineups. Neither are you supposed to line up your beard. Right? Completely take off your beard. Right? You can trim it, but you can't line it up or take it off completely. Right? Our customs are to have beards, right? No lineups. And somebody might read this and be like, why did the Lord ordain that? And honestly, can't give you an answer, but one thing I do know is that all His commandments are righteous and are to our benefit. So, yeah, I follow them. I'll say that. I follow them. But, we were told strictly, don't take off that beard. And what is the consequence for that? This condition. Right? This right here shows you that our people are different. Now, another example right here. It says Trump's new federal budget cuts have pulled the plug on a major sickle cell research grant at Duke University, a blow to the 90% of sickle cell patients who are black. The NIH claims the project was too focused on DEI and lacked return on investment. Doctors warn these cuts could roll back decades of progress fighting this painful, life-threatening disease. And it's the same point. It's the same point that, who are the ones most affected by this? Why is it that, the so-called black are the most affected by this disease? And the answer is in Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse. Let's see if I can find it. And verse 60 it says, I'll start at verse 49. It says, Then Yahweh will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed even great plagues, and of long continuance and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou was afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will Yahweh bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. Right, so that's the key. Is that the Israelites, for disobedience, part of the curses is that he was gonna bring plagues upon us that were not written in the book of this law. Right? Plagues that are literally new. And, who is this towards? The Israelites. And that's why you see, 90% of sickle cell patients are black. Right? A plague that was not written in the book. Right? Sickle cell, I don't believe is in the Bible. Right? So these are the curses, playing out. And this shows you that we are still in captivity and we are still in hell. When people talk about hell, it's not a place where you burn forever. That's mythology. Hell is a low condition. And right now, the Israelites are at the lowest condition that we have ever been. Right? We are at the bottom of the barrel. Okay? The nations look at us, as the scum of the earth. They look at the Israelite man as weak. They look at the Israelite woman, as whores. And, we're just looked down upon. As it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28, we're going to be, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations where the Yahweh shall lead thee. Right? So we're going to be an eyesight. People are going to look at us and be like, damn, like this is a fucked up ass nation. An astonishment. So everything that the Lord said he was going to do, he delivered. And as it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 46, it says, And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. Right, so these curses were going to be upon us for a sign and a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So the descendants of the Israelites today were going to be under the curses, and they're supposed to be for a signet, okay, an identifier of who they really are. So I just wanted to point out those, points I realized today as I was looking on the YouTube. There's no, coincidences. So hopefully this was edifying, a quick hit. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahushua Ba'Hashem, Rokakwadash, and double honors to the elder bishops and apostles of Great Millstone that tell me this truth. Shalom, see you like Shalom.